Look around and fat tire e-bikes seem to be everywhere nowadays, with even their folding variants being more affordable than ever. If you don't mind bland styling and a very basic no-frills design, for under $1,000, the Cycrown Cyknight stands out as one of the most affordable yet still very capable Class 3 folding fat tire e-bikes that we've had the opportunity to test. You'll find a 48-volt 12.5 amp-hour battery and a very torquey 750-watt brushless motor, though it is rated for 500 watts, and you'll get a top speed of 20 miles per hour. As we'll cover, its top range of 48 miles is a little bit underwhelming, and its appearance definitely won't be turning heads, but most importantly, this is a bike with a lot of power and comfort both on and off-road, and that's thanks to its beefy 4-inch tires, its full suspension system, and that very powerful motor. At its regular price of $949, the Cyknight gives you a good balance between price and performance. Now obviously you're not going to find the fancy features and tech found on pricier e-bikes, including GPS tracking or Bluetooth. To hit this lower price point, you are going to have to make some sacrifices. While riding, no matter what power assist level we were in, its cadence sensor proves to be very jerky and delayed after you begin or stop pedaling. And so even though we didn't necessarily need or want to use its electric throttle as much as we did, we found ourselves using it far more than we normally would in order to compensate for that abrupt power from its motor. Now that definitely is annoying, but it is something you can quickly become used to. This becomes even more forgivable when the bike goes on its frequent sales. Just in the time of this review, we found the bike for $649 on Amazon and $749 on Walmart.com, and makes it a really great choice for those who are on a tighter budget, yet still want a very capable folding fat tire e-bike without compromising on performance. Again, the Cyknight is using a 750 watt brushless motor, but it's rated for just 500 watts, which according to Cycrown is to ensure the long lifespan and excellent performance of the motor. And although it has a claimed range of 48 miles, you're likely only going to reach this in its pedal-only mode. In our tests, we found that a more realistic range is going to be closer to 40 miles with a mix of pedaling and e-throttle. For comfort, the Cyknight is equipped with a front hydraulic suspension fork and a rear underseat suspension. The front suspension fork does a really good job at smoothing out the ride, especially when off-roading or dropping from curbs, while the rear suspension helps minimize the rumbles of the road. Its rear and front hydraulic disc brakes are decent, but we found that it is a little bit spongy, especially when we're riding downhill. You'll find 5 levels of power assist with a neutral mode for just regular pedaling. It uses a Shimano 7-speed, though similar to other 500 plus watt e-bikes, you'll find yourself riding almost exclusively in its 6th or 7th gear just because of how effortless it is to pedal. On the front, the bike has a very bright LED headlight which can be toggled on or off using the controls from its handlebar. In the box, you'll also receive a removable battery-powered rear light, though you have to manually turn this on before each ride. To keep track of your riding stats and speed, the bike uses a monochrome display which shows important information including the distance traveled, your battery percentage, and the power assist level. For the most part, it's basic, but importantly, we can see it even in direct sunlight. Now onto the bike's design, which we can basically summarize as generic and mostly uninspired. It looks nearly identical to a number of other fat tire e-bikes on the market, including the GoTrex EBE4, which suggests at least the frame of these bikes are being rebranded under several different names. In defense of the Cyknight though, it is one of the cheaper choices. That said, it's currently available in just one color, and that's a combination of a mix of yellow and orange and black with simple pinstripes. On the left and right side of its top half of its frame, you'll find the Cycrown name and its brand logo, which is in the shape of a black knight. Looks pretty cool. But for some reason, the brand thought it was also a good idea to add its full website URL to the rear of its frame. In the future, I'll probably hide this with some black electric tape as it's a huge eyesore and makes the bike feel very cheap. On a more positive note, when unboxing, the bike comes completely pre-wired. It makes the setup process significantly easier, but you'll quickly notice that almost all of its cables are exposed with the exception of the ones leading directly to its battery. On one hand, it kind of complements that utilitarian look of the Cyknight, but I think it's another area where costs had to be cut. Unlike some very similar fat tire e-bikes, they've decided to install the battery inside of its frame instead of behind the seat post like a lot of other bikes in this category usually do. I find that this contributes to a more balanced weight distribution. The downside though is that you have to unfold the bike first before you can access or remove the battery. Although it's not necessarily light, weighing in at 63 pounds, the bike is about 10 pounds lighter than most comparable models. As a result, I found it was a lot easier to carry the bike up and down stairs. Again, it's still very heavy and I wouldn't want this to be my main bike if I had lots of stairs on my daily commute, but in a pinch, it is possible. I'd say build quality is about average, but you'll notice a lot of welding points. Combine that with its cheesy website URL, and it's another dead giveaway that this is a more budget e-bike. Something else worth pointing out is the location of its keys, which is underneath the bike frame. And we found it was pretty difficult to access without bending down or over in order to see its keyhole. And just like with a motorcycle, the key needs to be turned to the on position and remain inserted in order for the bike to run. And so if you're someone who likes to keep your bike keys with your main key ring, this is going to be really annoying. Now, of course, one of the Cycrown Cyknight's more distinguishable features is its folding design. In theory, this should allow you to more easily store or transport the bike. The folding process is pretty straightforward and just needs 3 steps. You first lift the latch of the frame to fold the bike in half. You'll then lift the latch for its handlebar and fold it in half. And then you can also lift the pedals and they fold upwards for an even more narrow profile. And when it's folded to help you move the bike around, you'll find a handlebar that's built into its frame, which is located just below its seat. That said, the bike is still going to be very challenging to push around or move on your own. Now, even when it's folded, the bike is still pretty bulky, and it's really best suited for storing in smaller spots such as a bike shed or the trunk of your car. I will say though, unless you're especially limited by width rather than thickness, the folding frame of this e-bike isn't necessarily the most practical for everyone. While riding, we found that the Cyknight provides a very comfortable and very relaxed upright seating position. Its wider seat with dual springs underneath gives you a good amount of cushion. Combine that with its 4-inch fat tires and its full suspension, and the Cyknight is a joy to ride off-road. I felt very confident and stable even when riding on loose gravel and sand at 10 miles per hour or faster. Despite its lower frame, the bike has a relatively high riding position even when the seat is set to its lowest position. This makes it better suited for riders who are between 5'3" and 6'3". That said, shorter riders are in luck. My partner, who was 5 foot on a good day, also tried this bike out and she wasn't too discouraged by its height. To make this possible, I removed the rear bracket for its tail light, which allowed the seat to lower by another ½ inch roughly. This was enough to allow her to touch the ground and come to a full stop more easily. And as we were discussing earlier, the Cyknight's throttle is really good, but it's also a must-have feature. It's very responsive and accurately corresponds to the degree of twisting applied, and no matter what terrain or incline I was riding on, I found that the motor had more than enough power. But again, it's that cadence sensor that's the Achilles heel of this bike. There is a very noticeable delay when both starting and stopping pedaling, which can make precise maneuvering while pedaling, especially at slower speeds, much more difficult as the bike's power is far less predictable. And so especially in those situations, I found using the throttle to be more of a necessity, especially with those tighter turns. For the most part, I almost always defaulted to using the throttle for quicker and smoother acceleration from a standstill to offset the jerkiness of the motor, and then once I got up to speed, I would fully transition to pedaling with just power assistance. The Cyknight's gears shift smoothly, but this is definitely a bike that would have benefited from having higher gears. I rode almost exclusively in 7th gear just because of how much power assistance the bike provides. The motor makes climbing steep hills, bridges, and slopes a breeze and requires minimal pedaling effort. Even on 30 to 45 degree slopes, its throttle-only mode can maintain and even accelerate past speeds of 50 miles per hour without much issue. The bike can also start from 0 miles per hour and climb these steeper challenges, but if you want speed, you're going to need to have a rolling start first. Now on to the elephant in the room, its battery life. The battery life indicator on the Cyknight proved to be unreliable and heavily influenced by the riding intensity and quick acceleration. Anytime I climbed steeper hills or accelerated quickly, there was a significant impact to its battery. And in one example, it caused it to drop from 72% to as low as 30% in just a few seconds. However, after a period of returning to regular riding, the battery level would eventually return to its closer previous levels. With its constant fluctuations in battery percentage, I found myself experiencing far more range anxiety compared to other e-bikes that I've tested while riding a similar route. My tensions got especially high when the battery level would suddenly drop to 30% and I still hadn't even gotten to the halfway mark of my trip. As you can imagine, this took away some of the fun from the ride and made me more conscious of how quickly I was accelerating or how much pedal assist or e-throttle I was using for the rest of the ride. Unsurprisingly, with a bike this heavy and equipped with small yet very thick tires, you're going to need to set some realistic expectations for its range. Now, even though its claimed 48 miles of range is possible, that's going to be with minimal battery assistance and certainly no hooliganism. During one of my test rides, which covered approximately 16 miles and involved a mix of hills, using throttle only at times and averaging speeds between 12 to 15 miles per hour, I finished with about 40% of battery remaining. And if you can trust that estimate, that suggests I would have achieved an estimated total range of 40 miles if I kept going. It's a bit shy of that claimed range, but it's still acceptable for a bike in this category. And so the Cycrown Cyknight proves to be a compelling option in the growing segment of fat tire e-bikes. And despite its somewhat generic design and some of those awkward quirks, it still gives users a very good value for under $1,000. With its 500 watt rated motor, comfortable ride quality, and its capable performance on a variety of terrains, the bike can handle it all and importantly is super fun to ride. Again, its daunting battery life fluctuations may cause some range anxiety, and it's one of those compromises you have to expect with a cheaper price point. But speaking of cheaper, keep an eye out for its deep discounts, which can make this one of the best bang for your buck choices in 2023. This has been Paul with MakeUseOf.com. Let us know your thoughts on this bike in the comments down below, and until the next one, we'll catch you later.